Hola a todos y bienvenidos a un nuevo episodio del podcast de SquadMakers. Hoy tenemos una sesión muy especial con dos invitados de primer nivel. La conversación será en inglés para que nuestros invitados puedan expresarse con más naturalidad. Welcome to another episode of the SquadMakers Podcast. Today we are bringing together two complementary experiences on one of the biggest challenges facing technology companies today: how to build organizations capable of creating the technologies of tomorrow. First, we are joined by Arántzazu Bueno, Arantxa, founder of Bueno Advisory, a transformation executive with more than 20 years of experience helping global technology companies evolve. After leading global HR and organizational transformation initiatives at companies like SAP and Unit4, she now advises organizations on how to become more agile, resilient, and people-centered. Joining her is Cherupalli, an AI and semiconductor engineer whose career includes developing AI-driven solutions at Synopsys and designing vector accelerators for artificial intelligence. Harry brings the insight of someone who has spent years building the technologies that are powering the next generation of AI. Together, they bring two different but complementary experiences. Arántzazu helps organizations transform the way they work and develop talent, while Harry works at the forefront of AI and semiconductor engineering, building the technologies behind the next generation of AI. Today, we will explore how leading organizations in Europe and United States innovate, how they organize their technical teams, and what practical lessons our Hispanic community of engineers and technology leaders can take back to their own companies. So, let us start the conversation. I have a very simple question to introduce. From both of your perspectives, what are the biggest challenges companies need to solve to be ready for the next generation of AI, technically, organizationally, and culturally?
Well, I think it is the new AI generation, which I think is as many other kind of technological revolutions that we always have had. I think we have to kind of not lose the perspective of where we are and how is our economical system, and therefore how the journey of our products or services are evolving according to our customer needs and all of this. So what I mean is that I think there is a big trend now to kind of readjust everything according to AI. My perspective is that we should continue building our own business strategies, strategic approach, and our plans in how we don't lose the customer-centric approach that lately all of the tech companies were following, and which is so much of a basic foundation, for all of us, and then from there, making use of AI in the most useful and way applied to our business model, applied to our context, not the other way around. I think it's critical not to lose the perspective and to then prospect or forecast our business and have this vision where AI, as any other technologies, are enablers. They're not, and at this moment in time, at the same time, I would say also, generative AI is probably not, in my perspective, not as developed or as some of the main AI companies want us to believe. So my perspective would be, first business, and then positioning then from that business AI or quantum engineering or any other technology as part of the possibilities that they can help or extend or expand or help to grow, versus others. So I would set the question first coming from that, and I don't know, Harry, what do you think about that? if that is you've got a similar perspective, or if you come from a much more kind of revolutionary perspective on this. Yeah.
Well, well, thanks for sharing that thought, Aranza, and thanks, Rafael, for having me here. By the way, um, I would I would echo a lot of the points that you've
Yes.
made, Aranza, here. That AI, at the end of the day, should be viewed as just a tool and not as a replacement of human labor, for example. Um, but I mean, off late, what I've been seeing in the U.S., I don't know how it is here in Spain, but in the US, a lot of people are being laid off late. A lot of displacements are happening across the industry. But surprisingly, this looks similar to what happened in the past when the computers replaced the typewriting machines, or when the internet age started over and a lot of people were being displaced. So this looks similar, and one idea that I've been hearing among some of the other people in the valley, in Silicon Valley at least, is that, well, a lot of our work is getting automated by AI. That does not mean that we don't need any more people. It probably means more that we can make more work. We can do more work. Some Just because you can go from, I don't know, Spain to Paris faster because there are planes, doesn't mean that you know you're firing the train companies or anything, right? You'll find other ways to do more work. You can get to some place faster. You'll figure out to do more work. So if AI is actually automating a lot of our jobs, and I use AI in my job as a designer, and I let it do some basic designs for me, and then I optimize those designs. Sure, in the past it would have taken me probably weeks. Now it's probably taking me a few days to get to that efficiency. That means I can get on to do more work. I can finish my projects faster. So there's always more work. So that is my take from an organizational perspective. Um, and I do want to chime in a little bit on the technical side as well. Like, one of the challenges that organizations are facing, and I won't take a lot of time. One main challenge across the industry is to make sure AI is not burning as much energy and it's not expensive. Right now, all the big LLM companies are giving their LLMs, or the AI, what we call, is at a much, it's like heavily discounted, right? It's heavily discounted at this point.
Okay.
That doesn't scale. So that's another challenge. Anyway, so those are my 2 points.
So, Harry, inside a company like Synapsys, your last company, how are technical teams typically organized to build complex technologies like vector accelerators? Do you work in a squad, in a team with some methodology and a different structure? What are the key roles or figures that make these teams effective based on your experience in it?
Thanks, Rafael, for that question. So, yeah, I currently work at Global Foundries. I recently moved, so I cannot comment a lot about Global Foundries yet. But yes, I have spent quite a bit of time at Synopsys, so I can comment a little bit about how organizations were structured there, and how teams, or how the work was divided. Um, so one obvious, Synopsys is a very large company. They have a lot of products. So one obvious way in which I've seen things being structured, is that each product has its own team. Like, it's a very technical company that's selling a technical product. For the most part, a lot of the products that they're offering are software products. So if they're selling a software tool, which is something you download and you use it to design a chip, then that particular software product has to be very efficient. The chips are very complex pieces of technology. So these softwares have to be very efficient, which means you need experts in that particular domain. Even inside the chip design space, there are many subdomains, and each subdomain has its own expert. So to make sure the products are efficiently designed, they actually hire PhDs from each of the domain so that they actually are experts in that space. So that is one easy way of divvying up the work. But then if you have like 2 dozen products or maybe even
So
more, how are you going to put them together? That's merging them together so that a customer sees them.
it
Yeah, go
seems
ahead.
very similar then to enabling teams, very specialized teams working for a mission, and they have to collaborate with other teams to create their product. That's the idea, or it's different?
Yeah, you touched on a very interesting point here, is that all the products that Synopsys as a company was selling, they're all related to one giant project. Like a customer would use each of the products in one long flow, right? So, for example, you can think about it like suppose you're a web designer, you need to have a front end and you need to have a back end design, right? So it's one large project, but let's say some companies offering you some software for front end design versus some companies offering you some software or a package for back end design. Those two teams, if they're coming from the same company and they talk to each other, they might be able to optimize your experience in designing the website better, for example. Same thing applies for chips. When you're designing a chip, there are like a front end part of the chip, there's also a middle end part of the chip, and there's a back end part of the chip. It's a much longer process. So all those softwares that you need, it's better if the teams talk. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to be so. There are competitors and people can buy different parts, but doesn't have to be so. But it's better if the teams talk. And in Synopsys, they used to do that when I was there.
My experience is on the ERP sphere. Then for ERP, you always have to have a very good understanding, functional understanding. So still the orchestration, like so far, has been key, and I don't think that it should be the other. It should be in a different way. I do think that always it's very important to have a very good architecture defined. Yeah, I think that's key. And sometimes due to lack of skills and also due to the pressure of the project, of the technical project, or development project, there is not that much of involvement of architects into the setting. Again, like as coming from business itself, like we're just not going into a smaller perspective, yeah, of specifically the development teams. I do think that they still need to be very well orchestrated. There are lots of activities that can be now automated, but like also or improve in terms of the time spent. But this idea of, for example, that AI can code by itself, I don't think is there yet. I do think that it's even more complex to go that
Yeah,
way.
no, no, but we were talking about how do you organize your teams. You have a huge team that everything happens in that team, or do you have independent teams working in some pieces of the project that because they are very expert in one technology or in some aspect in some area, or
Yeah, I
there is
mean,
a project, the typical and traditional project management figure that orchestrate everything.
how we were organized was always per product, and then inside its product, like we had like different types. Like we were like basically per main product. I mean, as it happens also in many software companies, you've got most of the times companies that are acquiring or doing some M&As with other companies that do kind of enhance their product portfolio, yeah, covering some of the needs that or functionalities that the original product doesn't have, yeah, and in that case is sometimes very difficult. Like you always have to balance the decision. Okay, does it make sense that I merge both teams? Yeah. Or do I keep it independently and working in parallel? Because then later on, I'm just gonna work more on the integration of the functionalities of this product together with this other product, because maybe the infrastructure, sometimes the decision on what is the future or the journey of a product. I mean, you have to kind of take it from, okay, does it make sense right now? Like all of the investment that we're gonna have on maybe recoding from scratch, or maybe coding these functionalities according to the product that we are kind of merged. Does it make sense, or do we keep it in two different technologies? Yeah, starting from there. Yeah. So my experience is that I've been working on very different models. Yeah. Some models were just unifying things because of the specific industry they were covering, because of the specific, for example, financial services or things like that, where on one side you're following all of the different legal and also industry kind of trends, yeah, and then you are incorporating them wherever the product is, yeah. In some other occasions, we were just keeping them separately, and in because technology or language, the programming was very, very different, yeah, and there was only maybe kind of a bridge between both products, yeah. And I think, to be honest, like I wouldn't go for a very like a best practice standard way, because it depends on the situation, and in every situation you cannot just only take what is technically the best approach, or what is from the time efficiency. I think you have to kind of consider all of the different perspectives and then make the decision from there, because sometimes even if you would do it, or you would maybe recode, reprogram, like redo the architecture, the initial architecture of a product, it doesn't worth it, because, or maybe you won't have time, or maybe the specific progress in the customer, or the specific added value or benefit in the customer, it doesn't worth it. It doesn't, you don't have a very clear ROI of those decisions. So in my experience, I have seen complementary, like different approaches. And I think also that's also good. In a big organization, you always have to have a good methodology, a good that you can also track and plan according to the different weeks where you are releasing, and the release timeline that you follow, either if it's a quarterly, monthly. I don't think anyone is like following now any yearly as it was some decades ago. But yeah, I'm not sure if I have answered you. I think it's more of a balanced way according to the situation. Yeah.
In your companies, I think that there is a big amount of people that comes from outsourcing, working in your projects. What is the percentage between the outsourcing people and the internal people of the company?
Depending on the situation, but normally like no more than 15% outsource, even when you work for ERP, like you've got most of your workforce is, you have to design also the sustainability of your workforce, yeah, and to ensure also the knowledge transfer when people are leaving and things like this, because is your value, is one of the most important assets that you have, yeah. Sometimes so you cannot depend on the type of functionality or aspect that you are building, but in my experience, it has always had, we always needed to keep our our knowledge, like very, and so and to count with all type of seniority levels, but of course always with some experts that some
Hmm.
principal engineers that um, were very much aware of. I mean, the more you get specialized and on an industry, on a function that you're covering, the more you need either from a much more product owner or BA perspective, yeah, as well as from the technical one. I think again I will mention also the importance of architects in all of this. Yeah.
Okay. And Harry, from the perspective of the US companies, um, what's the importance of the people coming from third parties as outsourcing or AOR models or EOR models? What is the percentage between internal people and external people in your industry?
Um, it's it depends on the team and the project. I work with like two different teams, and I remember on one of my first teams who I was working with, I don't think we had very many um, contractors, so to speak, that you like the external contractors that you work with. Most of the project was owned by, if not all of the project was owned by the internal team, because it was a very researchy project initially. So it was, people were trying out new ideas and exploring what works well. So at that time, we didn't really have a lot of contractors, but we did every once in a while have interns, which there is a similarity there, not exactly the same as a contractor in the sense that an intern will come and leave, uh, just like a contractor could come and leave. So, but obviously, the scope of the project for the
Hmm.
intern is much
And
smaller.
the functions and the experience from the people coming from the third parties uh, were very relevant for the products you were building, or are people with base knowledge that can be hired for many many sources?
No, I think we definitely need people with some some, what do you want to call it, as a area expertise to some extent, because this is a very niche area in a sense. Not everybody knows how to design circuits, design, you know, chips. It's a very deep tech area where you need that knowledge in that space. So we make sure that the people who come in actually understand that space. Otherwise, it gets very challenging. Every once in a while, you might.
That people were hired fully for your company, or they were from outsourcing companies?
They usually come from an outsourcing company, but the company, we all, I mean, I haven't been in the actual process of vetting the company, but based on my understanding, the company, we already have an understanding that the company has past history of having people with that expertise that they can support. Um, we definitely check
Mhm.
for that. Otherwise, it's going to be very challenging.
Okay. Yeah, I make this question because here in Europe, if you are building a core solution for your company, the mainstream is to hire it directly. That is the common solution that we have. And this is the same in the US, or they are more open to acquire that talent from other ways to use it.
So for the most part, it's either hired like an in-house person, like a full-time person, or it has to be through a contracting company. Those are the only two avenues that I have seen in, at least in the US company that I'm working at. Companies can be diverse, but it's either through the contracting system or like hire the full-time employee. You said Europe has a different model. I didn't really understand that. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah. Okay. In the US are another models more advanced than here in Europe, because we have a heavy regulation in the hiring. So in the US there are the ER and AR models to hire people for as contractor or as employees in remote way, working from any country, not only in your place of work. Okay, so this is something that some of our customers that works in the US are adopting, because it is very, very interesting. It has a lot of common sense to use it. But here in Europe is totally new. So that was my question. It is in your experience. I know that you are not the boss of the company and you are not in charge of that way. But I guess that in your teams, the teams you have been working, there sure there will be people coming from that kind of models of hiring, and even in remote mode.
Yes, we do have remote employees too, but they're usually full-time employees of the company, so they get all the benefits. Okay, so yeah, the one thing I just want to add quickly, basically, well, you can say three, but they're full-time employees and they're contractors, and even in the full-time employees, there are some who are remote. Like I know I have a coworker I work with right now. He's in the Netherlands, and sometimes I stay late just to stay in touch with him, and we have to figure out if we have to synchronize our work. At the same time, we have some contractors who are working probably in India, I think in India. So we have to synchronize again. So sometimes these happen, but the remote worker is either a full-time employee with all the benefits of the company, or is a contractor coming from an outside company. So the outside company is mostly responsible for the contractor. So these are the two models that I've seen. But yeah, Aranza, you had a point.
Yeah, I just wanted to add because also in my experience, it was not like I think software companies are basically global companies. I mean, and part of their own kind of workforce is also distributed among different countries. Yeah, so it's very common, and that comes also as many of the software companies also even they have like 24/7 support, like for technical functions and so on, and also the development of and engineering teams. They usually be a little bit spread out, and sometimes you have teams that are compounded by people who are located in different regions, yeah, with even some certain time differences that you need also always to kind of work out, yeah. I do think also that it's very important the economical perspective on this when you are working on workforce planning globally, and that has been my case for several years at Unit 4, specifically for the engineering teams. And of course, at the end of the day, you are ending with some functionalities, some requirements from the customers, some innovation kind of projects that you've got, yeah, and you have to organize them, and you need to kind of program them in regards to the teams that you have, to the workforce that you have. But then there is always the economic kind of cost of all of this, yeah. And for sure, it's more economic to have some engineering teams in other countries, but still they are your own, yeah, because of what I was saying before. Because then you keep a better track of your intellectual property, because you keep a better track of their quality, because every time you are onboarding a new colleague or a new freelance or an outsourced company, you need to make sure that they follow the same time of maybe quality standards or methodology, and that requires time and delay. And you always have to, when you're planning, you have to take into consideration not only the time to deliver, the time to code, but also the onboard of new colleagues and new teams. Yeah. And I mean, working with outsourced teams or outsourced or freelancers, yeah, in my experience, it has been always very positive when it comes to very senior profiles, which are not cheap, by the way. So from that cost perspective, they go out of that. So that's why I wanted to add the economical perspective of this. Coming back to your question, what is the percentage? And as Harry was pointing out, like most of software companies, they try to keep their own in-house teams but they also try to have their in-house teams in low-cost countries, if I may say it like this, if that sounds, yeah. So, and there has been like different waves because the economic situation and the prices of these services, they do change. Like, for example, it has been during the last 20 years, India was one of the main core locations for this. Now you have lots of teams in Latam, yeah, in Argentina, for example, even in Venezuela, like you always looking for, or even inside Europe, yeah, you have like certain countries, like more East Europe countries, where you have high qualified engineers because they have what good qualification, yeah, but they do work for less for a less cost, yeah. So that economical perspective is something. So you always have to balance, okay, knowledge, time to ensure that the quality of what is delivered is following the same practice, the same methodology. Like there is the onboarding time, the IP, the intellectual property, the knowledge, what happens if there's like, for example, there were moments like during the pandemic that the attrition rates in India were almost impossible, you know, because there were so many, it was a very dynamic country, yeah, and it was difficult to maintain projects where the engineers were there, yeah. So a little bit more complex than just
I have a tricky question now. It's about these hirings. In Silicon Valley and in highly technical companies, do you think there is still a bias when choosing engineering talent? For example, favoring people already based in the US over equally a strong remote talent from places like Hispanoamerica, India, or other international markets? And if so, what would help companies trust and integrate global technical talent more effectively?
Oh, that is a tricky question. I've been part of a few hiring teams. Like I interviewed some people in the past. Um, for the most part, when my team, in my first team where I was, um, it was mostly hiring people that were local, because the team was trying out a new technology. They needed people who were building technology really close. But as the team grew, I've seen a lot of people come in from remote locations. Didn't have to be in Silicon Valley where I was at. We had teams, European team members, we had quite a few of them. Um, we I think we also had a few people in India, if I'm not wrong. But for the most part, the highest priority, well, they don't want to skimp on quality of talent, but if they do find a talent that's equally good and that's cheaper, I think I've seen companies go for that. I know there was one team that had a strong base in Vietnam among the many teams in the company, and Vietnam is definitely a low cost center, but they have over time built that expertise in that one area. And so, because the expertise is there and it was a low cost center, it made sense for the company to, for example, have people over there. So, definitely, talent quality comes first. If you're not able to find the talent outside, then you have to hire people local, and that is definitely going to be expensive for the company. But if the talent is equally good or 90% as good, and you can get the cost savings, I think I've seen a trend where companies are investing in of outsourcing. Well, not really outsourcing, but having remote jobs, or they have an office opened over there, so it's not technically remote. So, if that makes sense.
I would add here, I mean, first answering you, I've seen lots of biases, and I think that the last decade probably has been, as I was saying before, like teams are more globalized and people are used to kind of work with different nationalities. So then the more experience you've got with other kind of cultures, nations, and so on, the less bias you have, the less of a stereotype that you have. Yeah, but I've seen biases with not that much with the workers themselves, but much more with some a little bit more higher like executives. Yeah, and there has been for several decades also the idea that everything that was coming from US, from the Silicon Valley, was better just because it's coming from there, where it doesn't have to be. And yeah, I think that was a little bit of a brand that it was. And for sure also the cost of a simple engineer was like maybe 200K, and compared to maybe other countries where maybe you're just reducing that cost by 10. Yeah, maybe in Indonesia or in some places, as now Harry was mentioning. But my question here is that, or my perspective here to add here is like, how much of the success of the critical um, kind of skills of engineers and the talent, how much of the success of a project depends on the, let me say, messiness of a team or an individual versus the proper methodology or the proper process you're following in engineering. Yeah. And what I want to say is that I've seen also many very good skilled engineers that were moving out because they got a better proposal in smaller companies, where they were so frustrated because there was no proper quality of the process, and that can be super frustrating, and I have seen also like sometimes hiring very junior people that following a proper methodology, like very well managed, then they really produce as maybe not as a senior engineer, but much more than. So I, again, and sorry, maybe in the whole podcast session, I'm putting lots of different variables and terms into the optic, because I do think they do play a role. I do think it cannot be just we can just not only talking about talent without properly talking about an architecture, or properly talking about methodology, about a quality process, about all of this, because all of those things matter. Yeah, as well as a proper product kind of roadmap. Yeah, how well the product roadmap is defined, how strategic, how considering all of the different I don't know, functionalities also determines the success of it. Yeah, none of the different ingredients or elements of it can determine the success, but you always have to kind of consider all of them together. Yeah, so.
Okay. Okay. And since both of you have been involved in selection processes, how do you make sure the candidate really has the right experience for a specific project? How much can you trust interviews, automated tests, resumes, or credentials? And what methods work best for evaluate whether someone can actually perform in a real technical environment?
Mm-hmm.
I would say that, well, your question is covering most of the how to assess the competence, the technical competence, and that's very important. I think that, yeah, always you should have kind of an assessment-centered approach. Like, and I'm saying an approach because there's only a CV. Just because you've done it, you don't know the level of. I think I always have trusted. Or include some type of, even if you use any type of now assessments that are at Godzilla or any of these companies, yeah, to kind of go faster in your recruitment process, yeah, you always have to kind of have some type of proper technical check with some principal engineer or someone that can really challenge the hire. Yeah. I'm not so sure. Maybe I probably now AI can work on all of these things, but so far my experience is with proper experts, and I'm not so sure how far even the current most developed AI generative models can assess that technical aspect. I am not a fan of that approach. I still think that the context of it and is coming. I do value a lot on the expertise. And you were mentioning about some aspects, but one of the things that I want to also bring into the conversation is also the aspect more related to is the technical competences, yeah, but it's also where the individual is, the motivation, like what is their purpose, like more or less in life. Okay, how that matches. And I'm saying this because some of these aspects were not properly considered some years ago, and then we were all like the last 10 years in this war of talent, like we were with this. Now the market is changing, but I'm not so sure it won't come back into that war of talent, because I do believe in that expertise is needed. But forgetting about the aspects of the much more personal aspects of the individual, yeah, was really letting companies or businesses and teams in a very reactive way. And I think covering the other aspects of more the career perspective, how this project really matches your expectations, how also covering the cultural aspects, yeah, what is your working style, yeah, ensures that you reduce the amount of attrition, that you increase also the level of engagement, yeah, and therefore the productivity, and not only on an individual level. I mean, working in engineering means working in a team, yeah, no matter if that is a structured team or that changes or whatever is the, but you need to have that type of aspects covered in the assessment. And sorry for the long answer, but yeah.
Don't worry. Don't worry.
I think
Yeah.
I agree with Arantha.
For you, Harry?
Yeah, I agree with Arantha. For the most part, that technical assessment is very important, and that that's where I was mostly my that was my contribution during the hiring, is that I was assessing the candidates' technical skills. Um, and usually we make sure that it's not one person who's assessing the person's technical skill, but more than like three or four people who used to assess. But I've seen of late actually AI is being used to assess people. Actually, I have a friend who has a startup that is building AI for hiring, to be honest. And they claim they've had some success. So I, but to some extent,
We don't trust on that. We don't trust.
um, I mean, I don't think I want to completely challenge Aranza's point there, because I think she's making a point, because I think there has to be a human element involved in that. So maybe the step that all these AI hiring startups might be taking is that there's an initial screening that the AI can do, maybe, but the final steps are still going to be a human at the gate. I think that's usually
Yeah,
what's
totally.
happening anyway, for the most part, that I've seen. But going back to
Yes.
my experience, um, yeah, when I was interviewing people, we used to have like three or four people, or five people interview people. Even when I applied for my job, I had like five people interview me, and they all go back, then they give their own scores, and then on an average, then they choose decide whether the person's average is high enough to be hired. That used to be the process of hiring when I was assessing technical. But at the same time, they also do check for they also have some sort of a HR interview where I'm pretty sure Anza might know a lot more about it, but they do evaluate the person's capability to, the mental state, or are they able to, I won't say mental state, but the, I would say it's more like their approach to, or their overview, or their vision towards life, or how do they see themselves in the company, where do they expect to see themselves in the future. All these things are not technically accessible. They are like a human, uh, HR kind of an assessment that people do, and if they see something that they want to raise a red flag on, they will usually do that. Even if the candidate has really strong technical background, you still want to evaluate whether the person is actually interested in working at the company and they want to grow in the company, versus, they're just trying to get in there, stick around for a few months, and then walk away. That doesn't help the company. So I think there's that aspect too.
Okay.
um Hope I answered that question,
Okay.
and hope I didn't step on Aranza's
Um,
feet over there by saying that there are AI companies hiring now. But
No, 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 no. To make a comment here because, to be honest, there is a lot to kind of think about because, okay, this is not only the assessments, it's a recruitment process, yeah. But things that what I would put automation is, for example, to give a follow up to the candidate, yeah, to improve
yes.
the experience, because it happens so often, yeah, that people are doing, I don't know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 interviews, yeah, and they are not really aware, like they forget to contact back or to give some information. That is where easy, just ensure that there is an automated process to keep the candidate or all candidates on a process like updated, yeah. And even saying we have no news so far is important, yeah. And I think that we tend to think about situations where you hire because it's a whatever cost, yeah, but no, they're people, and then you can worry or be concerned about the attrition you've got and all of these, but you have to ensure the experience since the beginning, and not only with the people that you're hiring, but also with the people that you are dismissing in the process. So the automation, I would do it, and I will include AI and all of this, ensuring that experience for sure. Yeah, not only like in the assessment, which it can help, as Harry was just mentioning, maybe some aspects of it. Yeah, but the critical ones need to be at least with some human decision. Like with expert decision, not whatever human, but expert decision. So.
human, human expert.
Well, human also in the experience you're getting, like treated as a human, not as a resource, or as a, I think you in all aspects. Then I think it's critical.
Okay. Returning to the AI industry, you know that the AI adoption evolves around the world. Many companies are starting to delegate data analysis, recommendations, and even decision making to AI platforms. When these platforms become core to the business, they also create a new kind of dependency. How do you think companies should balance the benefits of AI with the risk to relying too heavily on external and centralized AI systems?
It's a very hard problem. Nobody has an answer to that at this point. Everybody's figuring it out at this point. That's, uh, I'm pretty sure if you ask the CEO of Google versus the CEO of Microsoft, you might get different answers for this question.
Yes, sure. But that's the reason we don't ask them.
um, but I mean, it is becoming a challenge where are we becoming so reliant on these machines that our own capabilities are atrophying, our own capabilities are getting lost, and how do we how do we manage that? I mean, I could make one analogy, and maybe people will say, yeah, that makes sense. But no, I don't think most of us know how to grow crops or plants, or even go hunting anymore, for that matter. There was a time where almost everybody needed to know that. But that skill is lost. If you leave me in the jungle and you ask me to go hunt an animal or find the right plants and fruits so that I can survive, it's unlikely. I don't know about you, Rafael. Maybe you seem like somebody who can survive anywhere, but at least for me, it's a challenge. So over time, as we do rely, but there we are still relying on humans, right? Like some other human is actually growing the crops for me. Some other human is, like hunting the animal, or not really hunting anymore. We That is also agriculture at this point, but somebody else is making all the food and getting to me. But so the whole process has been streamlined to the point that the end consumer doesn't even know how to do the whole thing. So now, is AI just another step in that process, or are we actually losing more than that? That is where we are at. That's the inflection point where we are at as a civilization, or as a species for that matter. Is that, are we've been reliant on automation for so long, right? I'm pretty sure none of us know how to run a remote video software on which we are actually talking right now, right? We don't know how to design this, we just know how to use it. Let's see, I think, Anand, I have the same problem as you now with the
Yeah,
light.
the light.
but but the point I'm trying to make is that there has been automation coming,
This is
oh, in different parts, and
the
AI.
AI is taking decisions for us.
Yeah, yes, that's the main challenge, is that it's not
This is
just
a smart
doing.
building.
Yes, so it's not just doing, you know, dumb work for us. It actually can make smart decisions. Can we make an argument that we still there's some sort of hierarchy of decisions, and simpler decisions can be given to AI while we hold the higher decisions, or can it take over? Where is that line is what we don't know at this point. Um, I think there is a way forward where it can be treated as a tool, and we have to draw a strict boundary where that line is, where AI can do this decision, but some of these decisions, some more critical decisions, should always be made by humans. It comes down to the same hiring philosophy, or
Yeah,
so where that line
yeah,
is.
sure. Pri- Principal decisions should be taken by humans, but many humans want to delegate this function to the machines.
Yep, yeah, that's the problem.
So this is a huge problem. And there is another part. It is a business problem that all your data, all your knowledge is stored and analyzed and transformed by an AI that you don't control, and giving the info and giving all the information and all the knowledge to another third party that you don't know who is it, what is behind that screen. So at the end, you depends on a third party who knows what is your business model, and they can replicate it without any problem, very easily, because you are giving them all the information.
Yeah, and with AI, it's very easy to
So
replicate
this
stuff.
is an strategic problem.
I do agree. I do also think that, to be honest, my background is psychology, and we, when we're talking about the human decision, we're also assuming that it's going to be, or maybe in this conversation, or in this type of conversations, we're assuming it's going to be a very kind of thoughtful kind of approach, and it's sometimes it's not. Like we take lots of decisions on a daily basis that are automated decisions. So I think is more about defining the process in a better way. So coming to your point, it comes into the strategy you are following. It comes also into the approach you're following. For sure, there are decisions that they do not need any generative AI. generative AI would only cause problems. And it's not a matter of AI or not, it's a matter of, okay, what you're capturing, maybe you don't need to centralize any decision because already like is very black and white, so there, no doubt. Yeah, I do think the application of generative AI cannot be now in any other much more complex decision. I do see AI, again, as I was saying at the beginning of this podcast, as an enabler, as a tool, as something, a technology, together with many other new technologies that are coming, because I think the potential is not AI by itself, but in combination with others, yeah, specifically quantum computing. Yeah, so I think it's a matter of the strategic approach you follow and the design you do with this. Yeah, let's consider all circumstances. There is no determined answer to this. You have to kind of optimize processes according to what is the decision they're making in that type part of the process. Then you then decide what is the approach that better solves it.
That we have only two questions more. Because we know that Harry is building a new podcast. It's called the First Degree Connections. That focuses on the relationships that shape people's career. Looking back at your own journey, what kind of connection had the biggest impact on your professional path? A mentor, a peer, a manager, or an unexpected encounter?
um, um, I would say recently it has been a friend of mine who was um, an unconventional. So it was a surprise. And I mean, I've had quite a few people. I mean, I can talk about my research advisor or somebody at my company who was like a mentor to me in my previous company. But the most recent one, who is a friend of mine, I ran into him at a conference and we've been friends for the last 3-4 years. And I've been able to connect with a lot more people because of the friendship I had with him. He's a very social person, and he's been connecting with a lot more people. And through him, I had been able to connect with quite a few people in the valley. In fact, part of the reason I came to Europe to meet a few people was also because of him, because he found a few conferences that were interesting to me, and I took a look at them, and then I said, "Hey, okay, this could be interesting." And then he helped me out with the plan and everything as well. So his name is Deep. I don't know if you guys have met him, but hopefully I'll introduce you, Rafa, at some point to him.
Very good. So- and the last one, the last one is for both. At the SquadMakers, we like to ask every guest a more personal question. Is there an historical figure you admire, see as a role model, or feel has influenced the way you think about life, work, or leadership? And what did you learn from that person?
I'll let Aranza go
First,
first.
Arancha.
Okay. Well, I would say, I mean, he lives still nowadays. I mean, it's not, and
It's
I think,
historical.
yeah, I think I'm thinking about Julian Assange. I think that the WikiLeaks and everything that he started working on, I think it's very important for our world. Basically, I think it. Despite all of the relevant information they were like posting and everything, I think the one about the Iraq war was really relevant to kind of it's not that maybe we were not aware of it, but we were not aware with data. Yeah. I think also the sacrifice that I think he had to,
Yes.
because now he's but how his life was,
But
he was in the Uruguay embassy and so on, and he was like really, yeah, I might say I'm not good with
I am
with
thinking on the people who are watching us that perhaps they don't know who is Julian Assange.
Julian Assange. Yeah, well, he um, is a I guess I'm not so sure if he finished his, but yeah, computer engineer that founded WikiLeaks, and they were like yeah, showing or offering information that was confidential, that was hacked
Yes.
to different institutions, like most of them they were governmental institutions. And what how why it was important was or historical was that of course that the information that those governments or institutions were providing to the public was had nothing to do at all with what was happening, yeah, and that was an eye-opening exercise, yeah, very important for many of us to get a little bit more conscious. So how that has impacted myself, and I guess many people as well, is despite the fact that we might have suspected this for years, yeah, or things like this, it was evident, yeah, and a little bit of a hero, like the
Yes.
sacrifice he had to make for this to kind of with a very important impact, and then how that translates into me and my, well, I think that inspires me in seeing the courage of someone with certain skills that were put on the service of
Yeah. His
humanity. Yeah,
freedom. He put his freedom on risk. Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, I think Julian Assange, despite all of the yeah things that like he had to, I don't know if that was fabricated or not, like I'm not anyone to judge, but I think that was his like
Interesting.
No, but actually, it's funny because one historical person that I was, I always take his quote as a as a guiding as a guide in a sense, like was a guiding stone. As Edison, who actually invented the light bulb that we've been having problems with so far. Funnily
Yes.
enough, um, well,
Not with us.
well,
And why
technically, none of
Edison? Why?
none of these lights are what he invented. He invented the incandescent light, where you send current into a metal, it gets so hot that you get light out. The new lights work differently. But anyway, he made a very interesting statement where the material that you had to use to actually, you know, it has to be hot enough to send light out. But if it gets so hot, it might burn out. So, how do you make sure it gets hot enough and it doesn't burn out immediately? So they have to come up with so many ways to the material. They had to find the right material, and they tried like 100 or maybe 1,000 different types of materials or something, and they had to put it inside of a gas so that it doesn't actually burn up. That's why a bulb is actually, you have glass around. If you looked at the older uh, older incandescent bulbs, they all have a glass around it to make sure that it doesn't interact with the outside air. Anyway, it was a, I mean, just imagine how you have to come up with that. You have to figure out that it cannot interact with the air and all that. So you have to try so many things. So he must have failed at least, I don't know, hundreds of times, maybe 1,000 times. So he has this famous quote that I just didn't fail 1,000 times. I just found 1,000 ways in which this won't work. So basically, when you fail, you shouldn't just be like, you shouldn't feel bad that you failed. You just learned a way that won't work. There is another way that it'll work. So you just have to keep trying. And this has actually been a guiding force in my life. I don't know if I always remembered his quote when I was, trying things out in different aspects of my career. There were times where I was always hitting a roadblock and I couldn't make progress. I used to take a break, go back, and come again. Oh, there you go. I think Edison is listening to me right now. The lights are going out. But yeah, so that was a very powerful quote, and you have to keep trying. Just don't give up. And the many times I had been in such situations where I used to hit a roadblock, I used to fail, then I go back, take a break, and come back. And sometimes I make progress, sometimes I don't. I go try again and
Yeah.
again. So that's an interesting quote from him. I mean, he's not the nicest person if you read about him. There are some aspects of him that are not admiration worthy if you read enough about him. But at least this quote was something that I took from him. So, uh,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Very
you didn't
interesting.
just fail many
Yeah.
times, you just found ways in which uh, it won't work. You have to find another way.
Yes. Yes. Very good recommendation. Thank you very much, guys. It was a pleasure to be with you tonight. Tonight because the light is south.
Pleasure's all mine.
So now we are going to have a beers. So thank you very much for everybody. See you soon.
Thanks. It was nice talking with you, Arántzazu.
Bye bye.